All right, everyone. So now we're going to get started. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 5th session of Hackschool. So today we're going to be talking about handling events and state. So let's get through some logistical stuff first. So this is the 6th week, or fifth session, but we're on week 6. We're almost there, penultimate actual workshop. And then after next week, we'll be doing a project showcase. And so we'll have more info on that next week. But just so you know, it's coming up. So if you haven't RSVP'd yet, please make sure you RSVP. I'll leave this up for a little bit. This is just so we have a good number of who's come out. So we'd really appreciate it if you would think of it like a sign-in sheet almost. Yeah, I'll give you guys a few seconds in case you want to take a pic. Oh, and throughout the workshop, the slides link will be at the bottom. So if you ever have a question about where you can find it, it'll be on the slides. So if you've been attending for a bit, you already know this spiel, but I'll go through it again. So this workshop is another step in helping you build your very own personal website. So we have a lot of mentors here who can help you out on like any step of the way, whether you're working on the stuff we're talking about now or something from the previous weeks. And the goal is just to get you to apply your learning and demonstrate that with the finished product. And of course, we will have a competition for your personal website, or if you're building something else, we'll also have a prize for like something miscellaneous that you've built. But regardless of prize or not, I think it would be really cool to have an outcome of having a personal website. So that's our goal. Okay, would anyone from Hack Kitchen like to speak, or?
Yeah, I'll give a really quick update. So as an update with Hack Kitchen, I was originally scheduled for this Saturday, but we're working with the Hill, and so we're bringing more resources. We're getting like a room reservation on the Hill. So the date is to be announced. But look out for it. It'll probably come out later in November. So it'll probably be rescheduled 2 to 3 weeks from now. But an email will go out Thursday evening to confirm. Yeah. And of course, we have to meet if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. And Bruin Odyssey, would you like me to speak about it, or? Okay, sure.
Puzzles out.
Okay. Yeah, and if you have questions, like if you're doing this one or any of the previous ones, feel free to ask questions in the Hack Discord. So the officers who wrote those questions might be the cyber officers. They will be able to help you. So if you're stuck, like feel free to ask. Yeah. So another logistics spiel. So a note on code alongs. As usual, we don't recommend coding along. So I'll already have the demo loaded up. And so like a lot of the stuff I'll be doing will be already prepared. So like please try to like kind of just more focus on what I'm doing than like trying to do it on your own, just so you can like better absorb the material. Because like after the workshop, we will have time for you to work on your own, referencing the slides, the demo, which will be up on here and on the GitHub. And like on that note, the link to the slides. Like I said, it will be on the bottom of the slides as we go through. But it's there for reference. And then also the demo that I'll be working on, the finished code is already up. So like whenever you want to reference the stuff that we've been doing, the concepts that we used, and you want to apply that to your own website, you could reference it. And all the previous weeks will be on there and future weeks, which is just next week. But regardless. Okay, so finally we can get started on the actual content. So I have a little GIF here on what our goal is today. So where we left off last time is just like being able to have each section of our personal website in its own section, in its own web page. But this time we'll be working specifically within like one component just for demonstration purposes. And our goal is to have a button that can expand like more information. So there isn't much of like significance with like what we have here, but something that could be added there is like if you have a lot more like academic information, maybe you can hide like some miscellaneous information, like other kinds of extracurriculars. Or if you have like a shortened section and an expanded section, you could have the expanded section hidden for anyone who's wants to see that. Those are just examples. There's a lot of applications of this. And this is just one type of way to apply what we'll be learning today. We'll just be using this as like a lens to see it through, just to make it easier to understand the concept. But first, some JavaScript. We can't get away from it. There's always something to be learned. So you might remember arrow functions from previous workshops. If you might remember this slide, if not, totally okay. We can go through it super quickly. So arrow functions are just functions without a name. And so we used it in .map. But the idea is that like within these curly braces, we have some kind of like function that's happening. And here, whatever like item from the map is being passed, like each item in like that original array, like we're just like going to be returning a string plus that item. And that was like how we used arrow functions. But we'll be seeing this a little bit differently, though the concept should be the same. So the key idea of like the arrow functions is that, or the thing that we'll be doing for our purposes is that if all we're doing is returning something, which I'll show you again in a second, but that's what we had on the previous slide as well. If all we're doing is just returning something, then we can actually get rid of the curly braces and return statement. And this is just to make the code look a little cleaner and also just functionally like easier to understand, but it'll be important for today as well. So let's see what that would look like. So I kind of just created my own arrow function here. All it does is return a number, right? So whenever like we call y, it'll just return the number 9001. So since all it's doing is returning just some singular value, it's just one thing is occurring, we can actually make this a lot more condensed by getting rid of the curly braces and the return statement and just having 9001. And the functionality will be the same. So interestingly enough, this is important because we can extend this to having it call another function. So this arrow function, we'll see this a lot going forward, and it'll be something that's really important as we'll see. We can just simply call, have that function and return it through using like arrow function syntax. Again, the reason for doing this will be made clear soon enough, but just wanted to give you a refresher on arrow functions so you're not too surprised when it comes up again. And the next JavaScript thing is array destructuring, which is a really big and scary word, to me at least. So if you might remember arrays, we've used them quite a bit over the last workshop. And there's actually something pretty cool that we can do with arrays. So let's take a look at the code below, right? So we have some array here, and it's just like 3 strings inside. It just says hack is awesome, right? So we can destructure it from an array into individual variables. So let's just say that, again, this is the same array that we had before. Well, let's let ABC, and these are some variables we haven't defined yet, but we're defining it by making it equal to phrase. Now that might look a little strange. Maybe you might think it should just make it a array again, but what actually happens is that each variable gets assigned whatever it is in order of like that array. So I'll just go back for a quick second. When we had A, B, C, that corresponds with hack is awesome. So this assignment becomes A is equal to hack, B is equal to is, and C is equal to awesome. And this will be really, really important over the next couple slides, just because it will help you conceptually understand what we're seeing. So no worries if it seems a little abstract right now, but we just want to make sure you understand that so the syntax is not too confusing later on. Why is this happening? Okay. Oh, it's because I have a goofy GIF. Okay. 1 second. Really don't like how slides does this. Okay. So, this may seem kind of goofy and has no purpose, like why would I just want to assign things to a variable when it already is in an array? Like that's kind of goofy. But it actually has a purpose. So let's say a function returns like some kind of array. So, I mean, this doesn't have much utility, but it's just for the sake of demonstration. So let's say we have an array with the strings of like some officers. So these are some officers that I've been presenting over Hackschool. So we have Thomas, Caitlin, and James. So if we let the same like group of variables, but they can be named anything. This is just like for simplicity's sake. If we let A, B, C equal this officers, so we call officers and we'll be returning that array. So it's almost like we're just directly assigning it, but it's through a function. Then like we can let that function return an array and assign each value to individual variables. So really similar to what we saw before, but this is more direct to what we'll be doing. Yeah. Are there any questions at this point about the JavaScript stuff? Okie dokie. Okay. So let's actually get into our main topic. So that was just a little bit of JavaScript to preface this. So how do buttons work, right? That's like really at the core of what we're trying to do today, is get our button to do something. So as we saw from our goal, whenever we click the button, something occurs, and that something is showing more things. Or if I click it again and it's already there, we want to collapse it, right? So in general, just to like abstract it, the button causes something to occur. And the button click from the user triggers that action. So it's not just like the button by itself will do it. It's only when the user clicks on it, right? So that's called an event. So JavaScript reacts to events. So for example, the user clicking on that button and performs a desired action. So, I mean, I kind of put this for the meme there, but it's really applicable, like the bruh button. I don't know if you guys ever had this. Maybe I'm like really dating myself by making that joke. But you know, the bruh button by itself like won't do anything. But when you click on it, the circuitry reacts to you clicking on it and like makes the bro sound. Yeah, maybe that wasn't that funny. That's just me. So some example of events in React are on click, which is going to be really important for buttons, and also on key down. So maybe you might have some input field and you might be typing in the keyboard. That's when on key down might be important. And feel free to ask me if you want an example of that, not to plug, but my personal website uses that. I can show you. Subtle, humble brag. But yeah. Okay, so how do we actually like take care of what happens? We need to specify that ourselves, right? So we need to be able to specify what event actually occurs. And this is through something called event handlers. So really like conventionally, we might like, if it's from a button, we might call it handle click, right? But you can really name it anything. It's just, this is how it's usually done. So let's just say we have some function called handle click. So whenever we click on that button, it will send out an alert. And if you don't know what alerts are, I'll show you in a second. But the idea is it'll just tell you air fryers can make anything. All right. So if that specific function, that handle click, was tied to this trigger alert right here, then we'll get this little pop-up, and not sure if it's hard to see from the back, but usually it might occur in your middle of the screen or the top of the screen. It'll just have like whatever text you had there. So that's an example of like Dart or event handler making something occur after user inputs the click. So how do we actually use it, right? Because it might seem disjoint, but similar to how we had attributes for all our different things, like for example, the image tag had a source attribute. The events are just another attribute. So for buttons specifically, we can have this. I'll put my laser pointer up so it's easier to see. We have this on click event, and that's going to be an attribute. If we had on key down for something else, that would also be an attribute. In general, we'll just have this here and then our function here. And you might remember this from the previous slide. So let's break this down just one more time. So like our attribute on the left side will be the events, the left side of the equal sign. And on the right side, we're going to pass in the event handler. So we're going to have this arrow function that will perform the handle click. Right? So that's the function that we're sending in. We have an arrow function that performs handle click. So let's think of a new scenario, right? What if we had multiple buttons and each one had its own message to put in the alert? So I didn't want to say air fryers can make anything every single time. I wanted to say something else. Well, we could make multiple event handlers and just name it handle click 1, handle click 2, handle click 3, etc., etc. But as you've seen by now, React really doesn't want to do that. And you know, this is actually innate to JavaScript as well, but we don't want to just make something new each time. We want to be able to handle it all together, because otherwise it would be really time consuming and bothersome. Who wants to read through like 10,000 handle clicks to figure out like what text we're returning for that one, right? So we can actually pass in an argument to that function. So if the functionality is the same, we can just specify the message that we want whenever for that specific button and just pass in the arguments. So for this handle click, instead of just printing out air fryers can make anything, we can just have the message from that button and it'll send it out. Okay. And so the way this would look, and this is why arrow functions like really are important, because they allow us to do this. If you try just putting in the handle click, you'll get some wonky behavior. So this is why we need that arrow function, because we want to be able to pass that argument in like within that handle click function. Looks really similar. All it is just we're specifying what the string we want is for that button. Okie dokie. Yeah, I already said that. This is why we need arrow functions. Yes. Okay. Right. So let's go back. Let me just show you what we have on our website, just so you're not like startled. I already put the content there, but we don't have like a button or anything, and we won't be messing with this for now. Let's just look at the code. Should be not too different from what we had before last time, right? So let's add some events. So I can just specify a function up here and just say function handle click. And so this is going to be our event handler. Let me zoom in a little bit more actually. So we'll just have an alert that says like, let's make it topical. I don't know why we were talking about air fryers. This is about Joe Bruin. So let's say welcome to the Joe zone. All right. And now we have the event handler, but we actually need something to take that event. So let's go here and add a button. So we'll just add the button tag as we have done before, but in the attributes, we'll want to add the event. So we want to do it whenever it's clicked on. So we'll say on click, and we'll have the arrow function syntax and handle click. Okay. Very similar to what we had in the slides, nothing really surprising so far. And then we'll just have to give it a label. So we'll say click here for a secret message. Okay. So let me save that and let's head over. And now we see a button here. It might be hard to see the actual text, but yeah, that's unfortunate. So that's the button. So we'll click on it and we'll get this alert that says welcome to the Joe zone. Right? Nothing really interesting so far, but you know that it's still very, very powerful. So let's try passing an argument in. So I'll have two buttons. And let me just add one here. So this one will be, let's just leave it as click here for a secret message. And then here I'll say, learn more about Hack. So now I have these two buttons, but I don't want to say welcome to the Joe zone for both. So instead, what I'll do is I'll add an argument here. And just to like clarify that it doesn't have to just say message, it can be anything. I'll just put text here. And so that's going to be the name of our argument. So whatever like string we pass here, it'll be in this variable text, and then we'll be able to send out the alert. So for each of our buttons, let's just leave the first one as welcome to the Joe zone. And for the second one, I'll just say Joe Mama, because I can't think of anything else. So, I'm really just missing with these jokes. So I'm just saying things that are not that funny. Okay. So the first one, we'll say welcome to the Joe zone. Hopefully that's visible. If not, just trust me. And the second one says Joe Mama. Okay. Hey, not that interesting, right? But it's pretty powerful. We'll see that in a second, right? So are there any questions at this point? Yes.
Does it make a difference if we put the handle click function inside or outside the main?
This one?
Yeah, if we put it inside or outside.
Should not, but we can go ahead and try it. Yeah. It shouldn't make a difference, but that's a good question. So let's refresh the page and should still work. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Okay, so let's try to implement our goal, right? Seemingly, we have everything we need. I'll break it down so it's like, we don't get too caught up. The idea is that we want a Boolean variable so that whenever we click on the button, it sets it to true, we show it. If it sets it to false, we close it, right? And the way we do that, and so I'll make the variable first. Actually, we can just leave this out here. Let's make a Boolean variable and set that, just call it expanded. And let's set it to false. So at first we don't want to show it, right? But for our handle click function, so what we can do is, if you remember the operators from last time, we'll use the not operator. If not, if you don't remember, it's okay. Let me just give you like a quick breakdown. Like the Boolean variables have like two values, either false or true. And so by putting the not, which is the exclamation point, then what that happens, we'll switch it to the other one. So it's false right now. So whenever we click it, we want to set it to true. But if it's true, then we want to set it to false, right? And just to make sure that I haven't broken anything, I'll leave an alert in here. So we'll say, you clicked the button. This is just for testing purposes. Just to like, so you guys can trust me that I'm not tricking you. Let me get rid of one of the buttons, and there's no arguments, right? So all we'll have is just a simple button that calls that function, and it will set the expanded to true or false depending on when we clicked on it. And if you also remember the Boolean operators, there's this and symbol, which just means if expanded is set to true, then we show it. Otherwise, it doesn't show. And if that's confusing, it's okay. Like if you've used like Boolean operators before, it'll like maybe like make sense, but it's okay if not. This is just for the demo. Like I just want you guys to understand the events more than this, if that makes sense. The events are a lot more important. But feel free to ask me afterwards if you want like more clarification on that. Okay, so seemingly this should work, right? We have an expanded, and we have this Boolean variable set. Okay, let's go ahead and try to see. All right, so it's not showing as expected because we have it at false right now, but let's see what happens when we click the button. Okay, so we know our handle click is working, right? The event handler is okay, but it's not changing it to true, right? And that's weird. I can click this as many times as I want, and it's really just not gonna do anything, right? So what's going on here? Let's take a look, right? Okay, so typically when something is already on the screen, it's like pen on paper. And don't hit me with like the thing of like, oh, well, there's erasable pens. Go with the example, okay? It's pen on paper. You can't change or remove it, okay? We say that this is static. That's what we say. Like when something is static, it is what it is. Whatever the user does won't change that, right? Man, am I really old for showing the mannequin challenge? I don't know. I'm gonna stop getting derailed by that. I thought it was funny. But if we could re-render the site, like so have the app refresh itself, then we can see the changes, right? So maybe there's some salvation here, right? So if I click the button and it changes the variable, if we could just have it show it again, so it's not static anymore. Now it knows that it's true, and now it'll show it. Maybe that will work, right? So are we good? Well, there's another problem, right? This is a little bit more nuanced, but basically just using the JavaScript variable by itself isn't enough to do this. There is some gory and bothersome JavaScript code to do that frankly, you don't need to do. But because what if I told you that React can help us fix this with relatively minimal work? And that's what the second half of our workshop is about. It's about state. So what is state? No, it's not California or any of these US states. No, it's not finite state machines if you're a nerd and like M51A. And no, it's not a state of mind, okay? It's none of that. It's state in like the most essential explanation is that it's some data that belongs to the component and that can be updated when necessary. So the key here and the difference is that it's not just like some regular component. React will re-render it for us. So whenever that variable changes, React will re-render that component and update it. Update it on the screen, I should say. Okay, so just a quick aside, because this will come up next week too, is that use state. So state is an example of React hooks. So hooks let us hook into, that's why it's named that, parts of React, such as the state, like state of some variables, and lifecycle, which will be next week, of the component. So just to like wrap this up, put simply, React protects you from all the gory details of JavaScript by just handling it all for you and giving you some blueprint to use. And really like it takes care of so much. Like you don't have, like as long as you understand like what the state is doing, then you're good to go. Otherwise you would have to use like a lot of really complicated JavaScript that just was frankly unnecessary when you're using React, right? So how do we start using it? That's always an important question. We have to import it from the React. So, at the very, very, very tippy top, we'll be doing this too. We just want to add the use state and curly braces from from React. We'll do that again. Just some syntax stuff, nothing too major on that end. And so how do we start creating these variables, right? So we actually have to define this within the app, like the actual component. So we'll define state variables before the return field. So down, do I still have my laser pointer? I do not. Okay, so down above this return statement, which is usually where we have all of our content, we're gonna have some this line of code here, right? So I have it as strings right now, but it can be any JavaScript type, okay? So let's break this down because it's like a lot at once. So useState is a function. That you might see that because we have these parentheses and we're putting something inside. useState is a function. And if this looks familiar, that's good. If not, it's okay. Just if you remember this, we talked about this like not too long ago about so this is array destructuring. So we can actually see what useState gives us and what these variables actually hold. So first is the actual variable that can get updated. So that's text. You can set it to any name, but what it is like text. So we'll be using this for the name of the button because you can't change that without this either. So we'll see that in the example, but the idea is that just generally, this is just some variable that will hold the actual value. And then set text is a function that updates the variable for us to whatever value we give it. So we'll see this soon, but it's very similar to what we were doing with just changing the variable back and forth, but it'll handle all of that like JavaScript stuff and like all of that rendering whenever we update it for us. So again, it's like kind of a blueprint for what we were trying to do before, but with like that actually works. And then I've kind of alluded to this already, but this is some initial value and can be any JavaScript type. So we'll be using Boolean for what we were trying to do, Boolean type, just to demonstrate that we can have any kind of JavaScript type in there. So as far as updating it, all we have to do is call the updating function. So what we call it is set text with some value to assign. And so the hint is we usually call this in event handlers. So the event handler is not going away. We still have the button called the event handler, but instead of trying to manually change the variable itself by doing like assigning it, we just use this set text or whatever set blank you have to whatever text. So for example, if we had text before, it would just be initial text, and then it would say if you want to set text to wowie, then the next time you call that text, it's just going to output wowie. Okay. So that was a lot. Are there any questions before moving forward? Yeah. Not this session though. Yeah. We'll be keeping it like very high level for now. Okay. So finally, we have all the components to make our goal. So let's go back, and first thing we need to do is import the actual use state. Okay. All right. So now I won't get rid of this handle click entirely, but I will get rid of this first variable for expanded. So now let me just move this back in just so it's all together. And what we'll do is we will okay. So first we'll make the actual, so let's focus on actually trying to expand it, right? We just want to be able to have the button close and open. That's our first goal, okay? So what we'll have is, we'll call it expanded again, okay? So we'll have a variable called expanded, and then our function that will actually take care of that for us is set expanded. So then we have the use state function, and for the initial state, we don't want to show it before the user asks for it, so we'll set it to false again. Okay. So what do we need to do in the handle click? Well, we don't need to like pass in any like actual text to change. So we won't be using arguments for our case, but what we'll do is do set expanded, and very similar to what we had before, we'll do the exclamation point expanded. So whatever expanded was before, we'll change that. And it might look like not a lot has changed, but you know, without getting too much into all the details, it's handling so much for us. It'll re-render it every time we change it. So now we can actually have it work. So I still have the expanded variable here, cleverly named that beforehand, so I wouldn't have to like tinker around with this. But let's go back here. So we still have our button, but now if we click on it, now it shows up. So it's like magic. React is really just like doing so much of the heavy lifting for us, but it's just makes it so much easier to use. So no matter how many times I click on this, it'll just close, open, right? And I guess the last thing we'll do, is, you know, it's kind of would be nice. So whenever we click on this, the text is staying the same. And, you know, after I've already seen the message, I don't need to be told to click here for a secret message. That's kind of like, that's kind of, and I don't know the word, but it's like, it's misleading. It's misleading. So let's have a state to actually change that text. So let's define another state variable. So we'll call this one text, or let's call this button text. Okay. So now we'll set the button text. That will be our function name. And to start, let's make it, so this will be whatever it is when it's set to false. So to start with. So we'll say top secret fun, top secret fact. Really does not matter, but that's just what I've chosen. And so just to switch it back and forth, what we'll do is if button text is triple equal, so if button text is already equal to top secret fact, then I'm just going to change it to something else. So set button text to hide extra information. Okay. Otherwise, so if it's not set to secret if it's not already set to top secret fact, then we know it'll be on hide extra information. So just by the way that we've like written this code, so we can do set button text and just change it back to top secret fact. And now what we can do is go down here, and we have this variable for the button, like I called it button text, but it's the label of the button, what you see. So instead of using like just like some like static text here, I can just say button text. And so now putting this all together, you know, now it says top secret fact. I click on it and now it says hide extra information. So that's pretty cool. I mean, it might not look like it's not really doing much to add to the add to the content, but really like it's so expansible to like whatever you want to do, that you might find some uses that I haven't mentioned. So, you know, yeah, so we've accomplished our goal, and yeah. Oh, that went by really fast, but that's about it. So if you want to add some state to your website as you see fit, feel free to go ahead and do that. If you want to work on some other content, like for example from the previous weeks, that's totally fine too. But yeah, just take the time to work on your content. We'll be here if you have any questions. And yeah, thanks for coming. I'll leave this up, the feedback form. The next session we'll talk about lifecycle, which is another hook, and we'll review the concept of hook again. And yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know or ask any of our mentors, but I'll be here. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.